The Australian Minister for Defence has decided to replace the Army's 22 Airbus Tiger armed reconnaissance helicopters and 47 Airbus MRH-90 Taipan utility helicopters. They will be replaced with 29 Boeing AH-64E V6 Apache attack helicopters and 40 Sikorsky UH-60M Black Hawk utility helicopters. The Tigers will be withdrawn in 2028, while the MRH-90s left service last year, more than 12 months ahead of schedule. In a way, the ADF is heading backwards. The Apache, Black Hawk and Chinook helicopters predate their Airbus replacements, but operating common aircraft with the US Army and Navy affords advantages Airbus couldn't match. It also gives the Army more time to try to replicate the expertise in engineering and supply chain logistics the RAAF and Royal Australian Navy achieved generations ago. There should be 12 Black Hawks in service by the end of 2024, and the rest will arrive by 2029. That should be an unacceptable state of affairs for a modern army, but it doesn't seem to bother the Minister nor his Army capability advisors unduly. It won't be until 2025 at the earliest that the Army will have a Black Hawk fleet capable of mounting any meaningful air operations. The MH-60Rs entered service in 2013, replacing 16 S-70B2 Seahawks, and are identical to their US Navy counterparts. They will be supplemented from 2025 by a further 12 aircraft ordered in 2022 to create a fleet of 36 aircraft. The UH-60M Black Hawk is the latest utility variant of a helicopter, which was delivered first to the RAAF's 9 Squadron in 1988, the S-70A9. The ADF transferred its entire battlefield airlift capability to the Army in 1989, and 9 Squadron's 39 Black Hawks became A Squadron of 5th Aviation Regiment. The UH-60M variant is identical to the US Army's own version, with digital cockpits and flight control systems, more advanced vibration absorbers, wider rotor blades for increased performance at high altitudes, and uprated engines. The introduction of the new Black Hawks, Seahawks and Apaches has seen a complete change in the way the ADF maintains its helicopters. Boeing will maintain the Apaches and Chinooks in Townsville, while Lockheed Martin Australia and its subsidiary Sikorsky Australia will maintain the Black Hawks and Seahawks. The ADF's intent is to shadow the parent US Navy and US Army configurations for these aircraft. So there will be periodic sensor, avionic and airframe propulsion upgrades to maintain commonality with the US fleet through their life of type. However, the US Army is already looking beyond the 50-year-old Black Hawk design. Last year, it named Bell Helicopter's V-280 Valor tilt-rotor aircraft as its eventual Black Hawk replacement, the future long-range assault aircraft. Designed to cruise at 280 knots, the V-280 has a maximum speed of 300 knots and a range of 500 to 800 nautical miles, depending on payload, and can carry up to 14 troops. By contrast, the Black Hawk carries 11 troops and has a cruise speed and combat range of 150 knots and 320 nautical miles, respectively. While the massive Chinook carries a full platoon, in the Falkland Islands conflict, one took an entire rifle company, cruises at 160 knots, and has a 200 nautical mile combat range. Tilt-rotor technology offers nearly twice the speed and range of standard rotary wing aircraft. The difference the V-280's leap-ahead performance and range will make in time and space requires some new tactical thinking. The US Marines and US Air Force already have considerable experience of operating the V-22 Osprey tilt-rotor, but Australia will need to work out new tactics, techniques and procedures from scratch if it adopts the V-280. The V-280 is also self-deployable, enabling rapid response across significant distances to support humanitarian and SAR missions, as well as combat roles. However, no in-service date has been mentioned by either Bell Australia or the Australian Army, though the 2024 structure plan talked about new rotorcraft by the mid-2030s. The RAAF originally ordered 12 CH-47C Chinooks in 1970 for service with 12 Squadron. When the Army took over battlefield helicopters, it didn't want the Chinook for cost reasons. The aircraft were retired in 1989 and stored at RAAF Base Amberley. However, Army decided to upgrade 4 of them to CH-47D standard with improved engines, rotors and avionics, and returned them to service in 1995 to support the Black Hawks. They formed C Squadron of 5th Aviation Regiment. Others were added in small batches, but because the fleet size was small, the Australian Army depended heavily on the US Army for maintenance and support. When the US Army decided it would embrace the new CH-47F configuration, the Australian Army had little choice but to do the same. 7 new-build aircraft and 2 flight simulators were ordered initially. The Army now operates 14 Chinooks at Townsville, and last year Boeing got an additional $38 million, along with a 12-month contract extension to 2028 to support them. The Chinook Integrated Support Services contract will see Boeing and the Army deliver through-life sustainment. The company also supports the Republic of Singapore Air Force's 10 CH-47Fs at Oki. The life of type of the aircraft in ADF service is supposed to be 2040, but the US Army plans to run Chinooks until 2060, so it's quite possible Australia will do the same. Earlier in 2024, Army announced it would acquire 5 additional H-135 Juno helicopters from UK stocks to provide continuation training for its helicopter aircrew at Oki, pending arrival of more Black Hawks. These Junos arrived late April 2024. The other part of the ADF's rotary wing inventory is the Schiebel S-100 Camcopter Vertical Takeoff and Landing UAS, operated by the RAN's 822X Squadron at Nora. Schiebel got a sole source contract for a further 40 S-100s in 2022, under Project SEA-129 Phase 5, because the Camcopter could achieve initial operating capability some 18 months ahead of its rivals due to RAN experience operating the type experimentally in the intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance role. However, the contract was cancelled in 2023, leaving just the original fleet of a reported 6 aircraft in service. Defence says SEA-129 Phase 5 is continuing, and it is examining other options for delivering the required intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance capability. Anything that lifts a payload off a constrained warship flight deck needs to do so vertically, which means aircraft such as the S-100, Northrop Grumman's MQ-8C Fire Scout, Innovero's Fox Maritime UAS, and the recently announced BAE Systems Australia STR-IX are all currently in the frame for a future tilt at SEA-129 Phase 5. After a period of turmoil for the Army's rotary wing fleet, things seem to be settling down. The Army's attack, utility and medium-lift helicopter fleets for the next generation have been selected, as has the RAN's anti-submarine warfare and utility fleet, and they're all pretty young. There remain 3 big questions. Will the V-280 Valor enter service anytime soon? Nobody knows yet. In the light of events in Ukraine and the Red Sea, will the RAAF, Army and Navy, operate drones and conduct anti-drone activities soon? The short answer is yes, but details are scarce at present. And why is Defence burying its MRH-90s so hastily? Nobody outside government knows, and nobody in government will say.